Monk puts it up. And Curry's got the board. Green gets tied up. And a technical has been assessed. Sabonis is down.
Let me say this. Draymond stepped on him, but Sabonis grabbed his leg first. Came in. So he grabs Draymond's leg right there. Now
Draymond Green has become one of the more polarizing figures in the NBA. Some love him, some absolutely hate him, but wherever you stand on the love-hate spectrum for Draymond Green, you can't deny that his antics are getting a little old, especially considering he's not the player that he used to be. Yes, still a great defender, high IQ, high energy player that is incredibly valuable and fits perfectly into the Warriors system, but he's not the elite defensive player of the year level defender that he used to be, nor is he the same level scorer that he once was in his earlier years with the Warriors in their championship run. But even as good as Draymond Green is and his impact that he brings to the court, Draymond is definitely walking a fine line between being a high energy guy that gets under his opponent's skin to just straight up being a dirty player. And although Warrior and Draymond Green fans might not like it, it's time to give Draymond Green a reality check. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you like this type of content, and in return I'll be providing more NBA content like this. Now, when Draymond Green was drafted back in 2012 as a 4-year player out of Michigan State in the second round, 35th overall, no one at that time thought that he would be one of the biggest draft steals in NBA history. It's very rare to have a player drafted in the second round become a future All-Star, All-NBA player, and a Defensive Player of the Year winner. And because of Draymond's late draft selection, he has always played with this chip on his shoulder, loving to remind all the teams who passed on him in the draft for some players who didn't even last more than 5 years in the NBA. And that chip on his shoulder that he came into the league with enabled him to work harder, get better, and exude confidence even on the biggest stage. And with Draymond Green, after winning his first championship in just his third season in the NBA, Draymond was able to secure a big bag on his rookie contract extension, and he had to let everyone know about it. He was cocky, he bragged about it, but he always backed it up with his game, continuing to get better, becoming one of the best defenders in the NBA, and even started improving his jump shot for a guy who had never been known for shooting threes, going from shooting 20% in his rookie season on less than 1 attempt per game, increasing that to 38% on over 3 attempts per game by his 4th year. You could hate on Draymond all you wanted, but he was backing up the talk, and without him, the Warriors likely don't become the dynasty that they ultimately became. Here's the problem though. It's one thing to be a big-time trash talker. It's one thing to be a pest on the court when you get into your opponent's head. That is all good and fine. It's part of the game. But we're seeing more and more of a pattern with Draymond Green where he's crossing the line with these antics on the court. Now, I do want to be clear. The play in Game 2 against the Sacramento Kings in which Draymond Green was tossed from the game for stepping on Domantas Sabonis, that play doesn't happen if it wasn't for Sabonis getting tied up and grabbing Draymond's leg. Like, Sabonis was by no means in the right here, and he himself has been doing his fair share of flopping in this series thus far. But rather than just shaking off and getting the leg untangled, or even pointing it out to the refs while his foot is being held, stepping on the player's chest to get out of it is excessive. That's uncalled for when you risk injuring a player, especially in the middle of a playoff game. And it's not like this is the first time that that's happened where Draymond has gotten into it with a player and tries to play the victim afterwards. Hell, it even happened in Game 1 where Draymond and Sabonis got tied up again on the final possession of the game, which resulted in Sabonis on the ground and Draymond sitting on him, keeping him down from getting back on defense in a 1-point game with seconds remaining, while the refs just stood there and watched it happen. It's a play that will likely be overlooked because everything that was going on the court in that time in a closely contested game, but yet another example of Draymond with some shady antics that he usually gets away with. On top of that, I think in general, most will agree that Draymond Green gets away with a lot. I know he gets a lot of technicals, which would indicate he doesn't get away with a lot, otherwise refs wouldn't be giving him tees. Like, the man got 17 technicals this season, which was tied for second most in the NBA, only behind Dillon Brooks. But for the amount of barking Draymond does at game officials, players, fans, there are a lot of things the ref let slide. And this is coming from someone who lives in the Bay Area, has attended multiple Warrior games over the last decade where I've seen and heard Draymond going off on the officials, and they more often than not do nothing about it. They let it slide because it's Draymond Green. The trash talking with players, they let it slide. Shouting at fans, like he did the other night after getting tossed for stepping on Sabonis, they let it slide. Can't see him getting any kind of fines or something like that based on what we saw. Even though I imagine if it were other players, They would. Draymond Green tried to knock out one of his own teammates in Jordan Poole in training camp, and instead of getting suspended for a certain number of games as other players in the past have done and getting into altercations with teammates, he steps aside to take a break from the game, taking the rest of training camp off, and returns to start the season. No suspensions, no fines from the team. And what makes Draymond Green particularly annoying as a player is he thinks he's a lot better than he actually is. Like, don't get me wrong, he is an incredible hard worker. He comes ready to compete every night, and he expects the same level of effort and energy from his teammates. And he has been better than what anybody has expected of him coming into the league, okay? Like, I don't want people to sit there and take this out of context as if I think that he's trash, even though I'm sure there will be some people in the comments who will claim that I've said as such. But Draymond Green acts like he's a superstar in the NBA and should be treated as such, when in reality, Draymond Green would likely just be a high-level role player if he wasn't drafted to the perfect situation in which he was surrounded by shooters, superstars, and a team that was in need of a high-effort defensive player with high IQ as their glue guy. If Draymond Green have been drafted to, say, the Hornets as an example, or the Timberwolves, or the Pelicans, the Wizards, would he have become a multiple-time All-Star? You think he wins multiple championships if he wasn't drafted to the Warriors? Does he even get a big bag that he's been able to secure if he wasn't on the Warriors? No, he does not. He would still be a good player because he's a rare breed in today's NBA that is always working hard to get better and leaves it all on the floor in every game. But Draymond Green, who will now be a Hall of Famer, would have been nothing more than an afterthought in retirement had he not found himself on the Golden State Warriors. Circumstance is everything in the NBA, and Draymond Green happens to be one of the lucky few who comes into the league in a perfect situation for his skill set, not needing to be relied upon for his shooting/scoring, and playing alongside the greatest shooter of all time and one of the greatest players to ever play the game. Now, Draymond Green, who has a player option for this upcoming offseason, has been said he's looking for a max contract extension, which, simply put, the Warriors cannot afford, especially after the extensions they offered both to Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins, in addition to the money they have locked up between Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Draymond Green, at the age of 33, who isn't the same player that he once was defensively, has become a liability on the offensive end, with teams not being afraid to leave him wide open, which forces double teams on guys like Steph and Klay. A guy who has had his most inefficient season by PER since his rookie year is seeking a max contract. A player who has more recently been more of a headache with his antics than the overall value he brings to the court is seeking a max contract. Draymond Green needs a reality check. The dirty plays, and then trying to act innocent instead of taking accountability for his actions, the taunting towards players and fans, the drama he's created internally with his own teammates, whether it be Jordan Poole or previously with Kevin Durant, is getting old. It was one thing when Draymond Green was in the peak of his prime and being a menace on the defensive end, but that old chip on his shoulder that he's been playing with since entering the league and the cockiness that comes with it is starting to get worn out. Even Steve Kerr, who has had to bench Draymond when he's getting a little too hot-headed to avoid the risk of him picking up a tee and costing the Warriors a game, has started saying enough is enough. We get it, Draymond. You exceeded everyone's expectations of when you came into the NBA. We know you're a fierce competitor. We know that the Warriors likely don't win all the championships that they do without you. We get it that you've won 4 championships and can let every hater know about it. But there also comes a point where it's time to put the BS antics aside, the cockiness and the ego, and enough of the dirty plays. There's just no place for that in the NBA. Again, I know Sabonis was partially at fault in the most recent play in question. No one should be absolving Sabonis of blame, but we've seen enough of this from Draymond Green over the course of his career that we can't just claim that this was an isolated incident. Let me know what you guys think. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.